Hello everyone, FPL Raptor here and welcome back to another video on the Fantasy Football Fix YouTube channel. In today's video, I'll be telling you my top transfer targets ahead of Game Week 11. If you are enjoying the content here on this channel, please do remember to like, comment and subscribe. But without further ado, let's get into today's video. So guys, today we are going to be mixing up slightly. Rather than looking at players individually, we're going to be looking at 3 player comparisons. Now, the reason for this is I think all 6 of the players, all 3 pairs, they're all fantastic options, but I know a lot of them are either similar prices or they play for the same team, and therefore you're not going to be wanting to bring both of them in. So it might be a choice between 2 players. That being said, the first comparison state is Saka versus Smith Rowe. Arsenal are finally starting to look good, as we hoped they would with the nice fixtures. They are now coming towards the end of their first nice run, but the fixtures do continue to be pretty decent up until about game week 20, game week 22. And I just think with these sort of cheaper players, as long as you have decent rotation in your team, you can hold them long term. So I think if you're bringing in a player at this price, as we'll discuss in the next section as well, I do think you're probably going to want to bring in a player and probably hold them for a bit longer than 2 or 3 game weeks. So do we want to be bringing in Arsenal players? Well, I think, yes, potentially. I already own Bukayo Saka, so do bear that in mind as I'm talking through this. If I seem specifically biased in favour of Saka, it might be because I own Saka. But I just think the fixtures are pretty good coming up. And as I said, Arsenal are attacking very, very well now. They're starting to really click. Lacazette and Aubameyang look like they've found a new lease of life under Arteta. Aubameyang in particular, pressed him from the front, track him back. That then goes back to Saka and Smith Rowe, Pepe, Ødegaard, whoever's playing. They just like a brilliant cohesive unit. They're struggling a little bit at the back still, apart from some heroics from Ramsdale. They really should have conceded against Leicester. So I don't think they've fully clicked Arsenal, but they're definitely starting to move in the right direction, and they're starting to string together a few consistently decent results, especially, as I said, from an attacking perspective. Fixtures-wise, the next 3 as a whole are really nice, with Watford in 11 and Newcastle in 13. I would just look at that Game Week 12 fixture. Hopefully, you've got someone that you can bench there. That you can bring in so that you can bench Saka or Smith Rowe. So someone like a Livramento or an Armstrong against Norwich would be perfect. Bring Saka onto the first or second sub, or Smith Rowe, whoever you've got. Just keep that in mind that you really probably don't want to play your player if you bring in an Arsenal player in game week 12. And then 14, 15, 16 is United, Everton and Southampton, which once again aren't difficult fixtures. Southampton at home in particular is quite a nice one. So if you take their next 6 as a whole, and even their next 10 to 15, they're pretty decent fixtures coming up for Arsenal. So I definitely wouldn't be looking away from them. I definitely think it'll be worth having at least one of them in your team, especially at the cheap prices in midfield. If we take a look at the underlying stats, there is a clear winner. Remember, in these stats, when I do the comparisons, if their stat is in green, it means it's the better stat. If the stat is in white, it means that, or the box is in white, it means it is the worst of the 2. So as you can see, apart from minutes played, and again, Saka did have an injury for half of the game in game week 9, was it? And also returned a little bit late from the Euros. They've essentially played the same amount of games. Apart from that, Saka comes out on top on every single underlying statistic that I looked at. Projected points is incredibly close, both around 21.5-ish. So Bukayo Saka is literally 0.1 higher than Smith Rowe. So we can say that's pretty much a tie. The Fantasy Football Fix algorithm over the next 6 game weeks predicts them to score pretty similarly. Expected FPL points is also very, very similar. 4.65 per 90 for Saka, 4.37 per 90 for Smith Rowe. There's not a lot to separate them so far. Non-penalty expected goals plus expected assists, there is a bit of a difference here. Saka obviously 0.44, as you can see on your screen. Smith Rowe is 0.31. I do have it in front of me. So the XG for Saka is 0.25. The XG for Smith Rowe is 0.2. So very, very similar goal threat there. Expected assist for Saka is 0.19 and expected assist for Smith Rowe is 0.11. So Saka comes out on top on both, but only marginally. But when you add those 2 together, it does mean that his expected goal involvement as a total is quite a bit, or 0.13 higher than Smith Rowe, which is quite reasonable. And across a season, that does start to tally up. Big chances, very, very similar. Again, they're both getting around 1 big chance every 4 games, which isn't great for either of them, although they are midfielders rather than attackers. Touches in the box, as we discussed in a prior video when we compared these 2, I think around game week 6 or game week 7, Saka does get a lot more touches in the box. It has dropped off slightly, but so is Smith Rowe. So in general, I would say that Saka is getting involved a lot more in the box. And if you take a glance at their touch maps, that is present in their touch maps. They're both pretty good. They're both playing on the left. They're both playing on the right. They're both a bit all over the place, really. But you can see there is a real absence of touches in the box for Smith Rowe, and there is a real presence of touches in the box for Saka. However, Smith Rowe just has this tendency to arrive in the box at the correct point. And that is something that will never be picked up by the stats. Some players such as Lampard, and I'm not comparing Smith Rowe directly to Lampard, although there are some similarities. Lampard had that ability to just arrive late in the box. Even Paul Scholes at points. There are certain midfielders that just have that ability. They sense the danger. They sense the ability to arrive in the box and they start scoring from it. We saw James Maddison do it last year for a little bit. So maybe it's just a patch in form for Smith Rowe, or maybe he's just got that natural tendency that he knows when to arrive in the box pretty late, and therefore he won't get many touches in the box. But when he does get those touches, they tend to result in goals. If I'm looking at these underlying statistics, Saka's definitely the clear favourite here. Saka does come out on top, but I'm not sure that it's massive enough to say that Saka's definitely the one. And the key thing here is, while Smith Rowe has gone up a couple of times in price recently, at the time of recording this, there's still a 0.7 difference between Smith Rowe and Saka. That can go a long way. And I know the likes of Let's Talk FPL Andy and even myself, I've considered downgrading Saka to Smith Rowe, not because of the stats, because obviously they favour Saka, but that 0.7 can go such a long way. It can be the difference between getting someone like Christensen or getting someone like Reece James, or potentially going for like a Rashford, or then getting up to a Heung-min Son. That 0.7 can go such a long way. So yes, Saka's the favourite. Yes, if money is no object, I would still recommend Saka. But I would say that Smith Rowe has got that natural tendency to arrive in the box at the right time. He's finishing very well. He's high on confidence. And that 0.7 million could go a very long way. So they're both fantastic options. If you own one, I'd definitely stick with them unless you need the money to downgrade from Saka to Smith Rowe. Saka has the best underlying stats, but Smith Rowe's at the cheaper price. Take your pick. So the next comparison is one that I've done a lot on this channel. I've done it in the transfer targets. I've done it in the price prediction videos. And I'm not just repeating content here. It's just genuinely one of the most asked questions this week. And it will continue to be probably for the next 4, 5, 6 game weeks until it gets to a stage where we own both of these players. And that is Ben Chilwell and Reece James. Now, I'm not necessarily just going to compare Chilwell versus James. We'll also have a bit of a discussion about fixtures coming up. Should we own both? Is it worth going from like a Diaz or a Cancelo to Chilwell and James, etc.? So they're very, very cheap for what they offer. I will start by saying that. If you consider what they're essentially doing right now is what Robertson and Trent have done in the past. The key difference between Robertson and Trent versus Chilwell and James is that Robertson and Trent are nailed. Chilwell and James are not. So you could argue that potentially that is why they're cheaper, although next year I guarantee these guys are both at around 6.5 million if they continue this. But they're still cheap. Even if they are benched occasionally, even if they can't have cameos, the sort of points that they're getting per 90 and the fact that I do think they are majoritarily nailed for the future means that I do still think they're undervalued. I think arguably they are the two defenders to own at the moment. Ben Chilwell, obviously, in the past few weeks has been brought in by quite a few managers. He's now up to 6 million at the time of recording, almost 20% ownership, very, very high. He was around 60% effective ownership in the top 10k last game week. So he has been the one to own because of his brilliant form, scored 3 and 3. Out of nowhere, Reece James got a goal, 13 points against Norwich, and now he's got 21 points and 2 goals in game week 10 as well. And now Reece James is the talk of the town. As you can see, over 360 transfers in at the time of recording, up to 5.7 million. Looks like he's going to get a double rise up to 5.8 before the start of game week 11 as well. So now everyone's considering Reece James. I think 100% you definitely want to own one of these guys moving forward. There are definitely pros and cons to either, as we're going to discuss in a minute, but I would say that you are really missing out. I don't really care about the fixtures particularly. Yes, the fixtures have helped, and they're not going to score every game when you've got the likes of Leicester, Man United, West Ham. I'm not expecting them to score in every single game, but the amount of threat that they offer means, and how good Chelsea have been defensively, even though the underlying stats have been average for them, obviously they've still been pretty good, I still think it's worth owning at least one of these guys. As I said, the fixtures are a bit of a mixed bag. Burnley's obviously fantastic, and if you're looking to bring in a player for this week, you'd really want to target one of the Chelsea players just because this is their final fixture of that really amazing run. But as I've spoken about in past videos, the fixtures are actually decent enough up till about game week 20, game week 21. So Burnley, Leicester, United, Watford, West Ham and Leeds. They're not fantastic fixtures, but Watford and Leeds aren't bad at all. West Ham and United are very hit and miss, although they've been pretty decent from an attacking perspective. They've been more hit and miss from a defensive perspective. And Leicester are the same as well. So whilst the 5 fixtures after Burnley I don't think are fantastic, I equally don't think they're terrible fixtures. And you're not bringing these players in just to target fixtures. They are arguably the 2 best fullbacks in the league at the moment, alongside Trent and Cancelo. So I think they're definitely worth bringing in irrespective of fixtures. And I definitely think it could be worth having a double up. Let's have a bit of a comparison between the two. Let's look at the stats because I think that starts to make it a little bit more obvious what my opinion on the matter is. As I said in the past section, if it's green, it means that it's the better stat. If it's white, it means that it is the worst of the two. So apart from projected points over the next 6 game week, which is Fantasy Football Fix's algorithm for projecting how many points a player will score, Reece James comes out on top on every single one. Minutes played, they've basically played an identical amount of minutes. Both played 360, so around 4 games worth. So there's not much difference between the two there. Projected points isn't a massive difference between the two. It's only 4 more points for Chilwell. And the only reason for that, because as we can see, James's stats are better. The only reason is that Chilwell, I think, not only are his minutes more predictable, but as we know, he's significantly less likely to come on for cameos. In the whole time that Tuchel's been in charge, he's only come on for 1 cameo, which means he's only come on from the bench once, and that was in the Champions League. He's never done it, or maybe twice, actually. I think he came on the other day as well in either the Champions League or the Cup. So once or twice, but never in the Premier League. So when Alonso starts in the Prem, Chilwell tends to just completely miss out, which is great because it means you get the likes of Livramento and Duffy from the bench. Reece James, I think last season, made 8 appearances from the bench in the Premier League. So if you start Reece James and he doesn't start for Chelsea, you're very likely to get a 1-pointer. So I would predict that that's the reason that Chilwell in the Fantasy Football Fix algorithm is predicted to score more points over the next 6, because it's taken into account that Reece James might miss 1 or 2 of those, and when he does, he's likely to get 1 point. So it's worth taking that into account, but as you can see, the Fix algorithm slightly prefers Chilwell. Expected FPL points over the first 10 game weeks, as you can see, Reece James is absolutely smashing it. 8.87 is one of the best in the league. It's a sort of approaching that level of Salah, and he's a defender. Like, it's incredible. The amount of attacking threat that he has alongside the potential clean sheets as well. 6.38 from Chilwell is still remarkably good. If you think 6 points would be a clean sheet, so it's showing that not only are they expected to keep a clean sheet most weeks, but they're also expected to get some kind of attacking return. Where you start to see a real stark difference is the non-penalty expected goals and expected assists. So non-penalty expected goals and expected assists for Chilwell is 0.22. For Reece James is 0.58. More than double, approaching triple the expected goal involvement of Chilwell. Again, I've got the stats here. James is 0.24 expected goals. Chilwell is 0.16 expected goals. So their goal threat isn't that different, but Reece James does still come out on top. Expected assist is where there's a huge difference. Chilwell is only 0.06. Reece James is 0.34. So what is that? Almost 6 times as creative Reece James is, or his expected assist is at least almost 6 times the amount. Reece James is hands down, so far this season, has the higher expected goal involvement. He has a higher goal threat, but more importantly, because the goal threat's pretty similar, and actually Chilwell was slightly on top until last week, the assist threat from James is so much higher. I don't know if it's just because he takes more corners. If he's, I do think that he's crossing from in play. Is so much better. I think there's been a crazy stat that Chilwell's only made like 1 or 2 crosses from open play this season. His crossing has been so low, whereas Reece James whips in crosses at every opportunity. And I think once Lukaku comes back, that expected assist will go up even higher. So that's something to keep an eye on. Big chances, basically double for Reece James, 0.49 for Reece James, 0.25 for Chilwell. So not only is his expected goals higher for Reece James, he's actually getting some better clear-cut opportunities as well. And touches in the box, Reece James is getting more touches in the box than Chilwell. 4.89 for Reece James, 3.5 for Chilwell. The touch maps are actually fairly similar. I would say that Chilwell plays more of an inverted left wing back role, so he drifts central quite a lot. Sometimes you'll see Chilwell in that like number 10 role, as you can see by his touch map. Whereas Reece James does tend to hug the line a little bit more, and when he does get into the box, it tends to be like the wide box over to the right, whereas Chilwell has popped up centrally quite a few times. So listen, the fixtures are fantastic. The underlying data, I need to make it clear, for Chilwell is still fantastic. But Reece James is putting up some numbers which are mind-blowing. Some of the best in the league. Higher than some of the likes of, I don't know, like Jimenez, Ings, Watkins. Like, he's got better underlying attacking threat than some of the best strikers in the league. So for me, even with the risk of cameos, I still think that Reece James might be the guy to own. The attacking threat is so much higher than Chilwell. Again, it is only 360 minutes, so it's worth keeping an eye on. I just think that Reece James might be the one. But the risk of cameos is definitely there. And what I would say, like I said about Chilwell, is when Chilwell doesn't start, he often doesn't come on. And that means you can rely on your bench. So if you've got a strong bench with like Livramento, Armstrong, Brownhill, or potentially someone like Duffy on the bench, and you're willing to rely on those, or like a Brentford defender, you might just want to go for Chilwell because it's nice. You start Chilwell, you know if he starts, he's got a good chance of returning. And if he doesn't, you know you can rely on your bench. Whereas Reece James, if you look at the lineup and he's not in the starting 11, you're likely going to get a 1-pointer from him, which can be very painful. I'll leave it up to you guys. As I said, I own Reece James, but I'm definitely looking at actually doing Diaz to Chilwell. Just quickly, Man City's underlying defensive data is still better than Chelsea. So if you're looking at the best defence, it is still Man City. And long-term, Man City do have the best defensive numbers, and Diaz is nailed in the team, whereas Chilwell and James aren't. So there are a lot of reasons to just keep double City defence or to keep Cancelo/Diaz. But I just think at the moment I might chase the upside of Chilwell, and I'm very, very tempted to use one of my free transfers on Diaz to Chilwell. Let me know down below, do you own either of these? If so, which one? And if not, are you looking to bring one in or potentially double up on them? I think arguably they're the two best players in the entirety of FPL to own at the moment, outside of Mohamed Salah. So this final discussion is for those of you that want to be a little bit more differential, or potentially in that first discussion, if you already own Saka, you already own Smith Rowe, and you're looking for another budget midfielder, I thought I'd make this comparison. Also, I think a lot of us are going to be wanting to downgrade quite a few of our players to be able to afford the likes of Son and Kane if Antonio Conte does join Spurs. At the time of recording, all I know is that Nuno is sacked and Conte might join. There's also Rashford, Ronaldo, Bruno from around game week 15 because Manchester United's fixtures will start to turn. So I know a lot of us are looking for those cheaper players that can start to then spread funds to more premiums, potentially 3 premiums in our teams. So I thought I'd discuss Maxwell Cornet and Conor Gallagher, who are 2 cheaper midfield options that I think could explode over the coming game weeks. We've discussed Conor Gallagher in a lot of videos, and I was really, really hot on him after like 4 or 5 game weeks. And then I started to go off him a little bit because he dropped even deeper when Milivojevic was back in the team. And he also stopped taking a lot of set pieces, and Milivojevic took a lot of the set pieces. Since then, he started to play a more progressive role once again, and Milivojevic has started to give a lot of the set pieces back to Gallagher. Now, I don't know if it's in specific games or specific training sessions maybe lead to one of them taking them, but in the Man City game, I saw Conor Gallagher on quite a few, so I don't know what the situation is. If there are any Palace fans in the chat, let me know, or in the comments, sorry, let me know who you think is going to be on set pieces. But I think Conor Gallagher's done enough to make us now reconsider him once again because he's been looking really, really good. And Maxwell Cornet is not your typical Burnley player, but my word, he looks fantastic. He is running that Burnley team. And I think it's time we gave him some consideration. So obviously Maxwell Cornet is 6 million, Conor Gallagher is 5.7. So there is a slight difference in the price at the time of recording. Fixtures-wise, I think they're very similar. The slightly off-putting thing about Maxwell Cornet, although I did still want to discuss him this week, is the Chelsea fixture in game week 11. So ideally, if you're going to bring him in, you could potentially bench him in game week 11, or just hope that Burnley will grab a random goal against Chelsea. But it might be that you want to target Cornet after the international break from game week 12. The fixtures after that, so Palace, Tottenham, Wolves, Newcastle, West Ham are all pretty decent fixtures. Crystal Palace and Newcastle in particular. We know that West Ham have struggled at points to defend, and that is at Turf Moor. So I do like the next 6 for Burnley, and they continue to be pretty decent after game week 16 as well. Conor Gallagher's game week 11 fixture is slightly better against Wolves, and then Burnley, Villa, Leeds United and Everton are pretty similar to the game week 12 to 16 fixtures for Cornet. So I'd say as an entirety, the fixtures are fairly similar for the two. I wouldn't put one massively above the other. It's just whether you think you can get away with benching Cornet in game week 11, or if you're happy just giving him a start. Underlying stats-wise, obviously I'm going to compare them because that's what we do on this channel. That's what we do with Fantasy Football Fix. But it's worth noting that Cornet's only played 280 minutes. Conor Gallagher's played 787. So an extra 500 minutes for Conor Gallagher. And obviously, the bigger the sample size, the more reliable it is. Normally, we can draw better trends from that. So 280 minutes might not quite be enough for Cornet to start drawing trends. Also, Cornet has played a couple on the left, or at least he has played some minutes on the left. He's played some minutes up top as well. So it looks like he will be starting as part of a front 2, I think, moving forward. Again, Burnley fans, let me know if I am wrong there. But I think he'll play more often than not a more advanced role. So take all of this with a pinch of salt, but I really wanted to discuss Cornet because he's a mega differential at 0.7% owned. And I think he could be a nice alternative, although I do like Conor Gallagher as well. So projected points-wise, the Fantasy Football Fix algorithm hasn't quite caught on to the fact that I think Cornet is nailed. So 11.4 must be due to the fact that they think that he might be a minutes risk. Conor Gallagher, obviously, we know is nailed, and 18.4 is pretty decent, actually, for a £5.7 million midfielder. And that's because the underlying stats are pretty decent as well. Expected FPL points per 90. Maxwell Cornet is coming out on top, only just around 1 point more per 90, which over the season is obviously 38 points, but we're not expecting that to continue probably because Cornet's is over a short sample size, whereas Conor Gallagher's holding his own over 787 minutes, which is still very, very impressive. Non-penalty expected goals and expected assists, Exactly the same for the two. 0.51 for each. The reason I've made Cornet's green is because he's got a slightly higher expected goal than Conor Gallagher, whereas Conor Gallagher's got a slightly lower expected goal but a slightly higher expected assist. And of course, we want our players scoring goals, but the two are virtually identical. What that means is essentially they're expected to get an FPL return every other game, which is very impressive for two budget midfielders. Big chances wise, both around a big chance every 2 games as well. Cornet's coming out on top at 0.67 comparing to Conor Gallagher's 0.46. And touches in the box, very, very similar. Neither are particularly impressive. We're looking pretty similar to what Rowe had, but nowhere near what Saka had if we're comparing those sort of mid-price midfielders. So Conor Gallagher's is 3.55 and it's 3.21 for Cornet. Touch maps wise, Cornet's obviously not played enough minutes for it to develop fully. Conor Gallagher is playing in that right centre mid or that right number 8 role with Milivojevic in that holding midfield. And as you can see, it almost looks more like a right attacking midfielder or a right winger. He does get forward an awful lot. So I wouldn't be put off by the fact that he's playing right central midfield because he gets forward quite a lot. He's very, very progressive and direct with the ball, probably because that's what Vieira is coaching in. And we know what Vieira was like back in the day. Even playing as like a defensive midfielder, he got forward quite a lot, more like a box-to-box almost at points. So very, very difficult to compare the two. I suppose for this, rather than comparing the two, what I wanted to do is just recommend the both of them. I think Conor Gallagher has shown over an extended period that he can hold his own. So if you want a reliable midfielder, I would potentially go for Conor Gallagher. Maybe just keep an eye on Maxwell Cornet. If you're not looking to bring in either of them this week, I would just see how Burnley do against Chelsea. It's obviously not the best contribution, but see how he looks again. And I think from game week 12, after the international break, if you're looking to downgrade to get funds to upgrade to Kane, Son or Ronaldo, etc., then Cornet could be a great option as well. Let me know down below if either Cornet or Gallagher are taking your fancy for the future game weeks. So guys, there you have it. Those are my top 6 in this case. We usually do 5, but we did 6 today because we had the bad battle stats. Those are my top 6 transfer targets ahead of game week 11. Let me know down below how many do you already own. Are you looking to bring any of these in? And if not, who are you looking to use your transfers on? As I said at the start, if you are enjoying the content here on this channel, please do remember to like, comment and subscribe. It helps support the channel so very much and it's free for you guys to do. Until next time, guys, thank you so much for watching. Cheers. Bye-bye.